Hello everyone, this is Melissa and welcome to the OpenSolar Podcast, where we cover the inevitable shift into a world powered by sunshine.
That's right, Melissa. Hey everybody, I'm Sophie and we're going to cover the people, the technologies, the policy, everything that's contributing to the acceleration of solar adoption.
We call it the S-curve. Hi, I'm Birchie and we're delighted to have you along for the ride, so let's get into it. All right, welcome to the OpenSolar Podcast. Today we have Sonia Dunlop, who is the CEO of the esteemed, the venerable Global Solar Council, and Professor Andrew Crossland from the University of Durham. And we're going to be talking policy and learning about these wonderful people who are helping shape the industry. So I might start with you, Sonia. Can you just give us a little introduction? Where did you grow up? A little bit of fun background, and then how did you manage to end up in this role?
Sure, yeah. So, my name's Sonia Dunlop. I'm the CEO of the Global Solar Council. We're the World Solar PV Industry Association. My background really is in working for different solar industry trade associations. I work for Solar Energy UK at UK level. I've worked for Solar Power Europe at European level. I've worked for a global climate change think tank as well, but my career really started in politics. I grew up in Brussels in Belgium, at the heart of the capital of Europe, as they say. Come from a very diverse background. I'm half Dutch, half from New Zealand, and really, I started my career in politics. And what I always think about what I do at the moment is being intensely political, because we are an intensely politicized technology in solar and storage, and so it's a good fit.
Amazing. And I wondered what there's a little bit of Kiwi accent, is there, Sonia? Just the tiniest? No,
maybe. Who knows?
And Andrew, give us your take on it. How did you end up in your role? A bit intro.
Yeah, good to see you again, Birchie and Sonia. So from Northern England, spent my childhood looking at coal power stations thinking, this is ridiculous. And probably should have been looking at girls, but I wasn't. I was looking at coal power stations. That's what happened.
Nothing wrong with that.
Went to Durham University, did an engineering degree, did an MBA, taught parts of the MBA at Southampton, and then a PhD on engineering and finance. My super passion is how do we get to net zero really quickly. The consumer side of it really interests me. Tangible reductions in people's bills and their carbon emissions are something that I'm extremely passionate about. I've had a career working all over the world. Bit of time in New Zealand. Don't quite recognise the Kiwi twang to your accent, Sonia, I'm sorry, but worked out there, worked in the Pacific Islands, worked in East Africa, in the UK, doing first-of-a-kind projects. So the first batteries in the UK and in New Zealand, and a microgrid and a volcano, are all partly to do with me.
Cool. We're going to hear a lot more about it because you're very modest, but you're, I'd say, one of the world experts on that interface between battery and grid. And anyway, we're going to have lots of fun on that. Maybe, though, starting with you, Sonia, tell us, maybe just for the listeners, what your vision is for, let's have a kind of the big picture. What's the vision for the Global Solar Council? We're obviously new members, OpenSolar. I'm very much drawn to your organization because we need this representative body to get up the S-curve. But tell us where are you going to take the organization?
So we are really the global organisation, of course, representing the interests of the global solar and storage industry, upstream and downstream, every market segment from off-grid all the way to utility scale. But more than anything, what we are doing and the goal of what all the work we do is to really maximise deployment of solar plus storage all over the world in every shape, size and form that it comes in. So we are really gunning for 8 terawatts of total installed capacity at least by the end of this decade, and then to build and build and build and build till we get to those really big numbers of, as you always say, right, delivering 50% of global energy demand. And so the question is how to do that, right? And so we have really identified finance and skills and supply chains, but most of all, grid integration, storage, flexibility and electrification as the priority topics that we need to be pushing at global level, and supporting our network of national associations to be pushing in order to deliver a world energy economy that has solar plus storage at the very heart of it.
Yeah, and so we, just for everyone, the three of us had lunch in London probably about a month ago because we've really kind of brought together all these points of view. And I'm really excited about the work and how we're trying to like codify that solution for the grid. Andrew, do you want to sort of speak to the kind of concepts behind electric protocol, Bill of Rights, and how you see it?
Yeah, I think it's relatively straightforward what we're saying, Bertie and Sonia, which is everyone should have the right to this technology. Full stop. That's it. So the right to put it on our home, the right to choose to buy it, either directly or through our electricity supplier, to be able to be paid, if we are supporting the grid, to be paid to do so. Very, very straightforward. It's saying, actually, we shouldn't be putting restrictions on this technology. We all have the right to it. And the three of us, with some colleagues, are working on a codifying that, and underneath that, a series of, what we call the electric protocol, all the measures that enable that to happen. So, for example, in the electric protocol, no planning restriction, or very, very straightforward planning process across a state. If I'm connected to the grid and helping the grid, I should be paid for that at a fair market price. If I am buying solar, I'm getting it at a fair market rate. All of those enabling pieces, that's the piece of work you're going to see a lot from, hopefully, the Global Solar Council, and really getting consultation and feedback and spreading the word about this protocol. Because actually, with technology that is coming down in cost all the time, oil prices go up, solar prices go down. Why shouldn't people be able to access that technology and actually start seeing, as I said right at the start, tangible benefits on all of our bills is my vision.
So we were at the conference last week, right, Sonia? And I don't know what the conversations you had, I'm sure were similar. We heard our stand personally. I was listening to many of these stories. So you have contractors today that can't sell solar and storage solutions because they don't know what they're allowed to plug in to the grid. There's no visibility and transparency. In the UK, they're called DNOs, the sort of last mile of grid operator, and they don't tell you up front what the rules are. It's just that it's really hard to sell into. And then obviously when you're plugged into the grid, you're not compensated for all the value you create with all the grid service, really important services that you provide to peak shaving and avoiding these big infrastructure and spends that the government's sort of forecasting. So Sonia, how do you you talk please about codifying that and the work that you're doing, and also if you bring in those trade associations and how you're trying to capacity build it across the world in all these different countries?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think one of the things that we have to do is really bring grid operators on a journey with us, right? And that goes all the way from the biggest 15 grid operators in the world that come together in the Geo15 organization, all the way down to local system, distribution system operators at the very most local level. And we need to be working with all of them to help them understand that a completely different system that is highly distributed, highly behind the meter, highly small scale solar and storage is entirely workable for them and does work in many countries around the world, and that there is nothing to fear, and so that they needn't put in place any barriers. And so we want to do that at global level, with the global conversation, with those big grid operators within the International Renewable Energy Agency, IEA, the G20, the G7 at COPs and so on, but also building the capacity of our amazing network of national solar industry associations, or sometimes solar and storage, sometimes renewables, sometimes the electrification, distributed energy, whoever they might be. In every country we either have or need a local advocacy and interest, industry association, looking at the local regulations and thinking about how we can take these broad sweeping concepts within the electric bill of rights that Andrew just outlined, and adapting that and converting that into reality, into the electricity market design of every single market around the world, some of which of course are highly liberalized and others which are not. And so we need to be working within all of those parameters, and that's what we want to try and really do at the Global Solar Council.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, it's such an important, mathematically important part of the answer. If you think all the energy demand that's going to be coming on stream in Southeast Asia and Africa, I read the other day we're going from, I think it's 1.3 billion African population to 4 billion over the next kind of 50 years. So, if we can help build associations that can create those frameworks from from the ground floor up, that'll be enormously important for climate and for energy access and the world. So yeah, that's amazing, all the great work you're doing on that. I can't not talk about tariffs, because this week, as we're recording this, we've just heard from Washington, from the Trump administration, the end of last week, on a raft of new tariffs. Sonia, what's the Global Solar Council's point of view, and how are you supporting the industry through this?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there are many markets around the world, not just the United States, that are putting in place either industrial strategies with incentives or tariff and non-tariff barriers to trade, often with the objective of trying to build up PV or elements of PV system manufacturing in their countries. For us at the Global Solar Council, the key test is always, does this maximize deployment? Does this boost deployment of solar inside this market, particularly, but in general as well? And because that is the North Star of what we need to be doing here. The tariffs that President Trump announced last week, the reciprocal tariffs, obviously, I mean, the global international trading regime is clearly going through a very difficult moment, and there are almost two different scenarios. But in terms of the effect that it's going to have on solar as a global industry, we're still waiting to see. I mean, certainly it's possible the costs will go up a bit in the US market, but by and large, we don't think we're going to be all that affected. We were already subject to trade barriers going into the US market. This is not a huge element of our cost structure, and we are a very flexible, resourceful industry who always find solutions to these kind of problems. And the fundamental economics that's driving the deployment is still very much alive and well.
If we can solve permitting, if we can solve all the soft costs, and there it is, ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Crossland does his Bond villain impression with the cat.
I might comment on the tariffs, though, if that's all right, Birchie. Is that right?
Go ahead.
It's not a tariff; it's a tax on the American consumer, and all it's going to do is I think it will have a significant impact on people wanting to be more self-sustaining, which is what solar on your house does. The second thing is, thank God we had Biden for 4 years with his Inflation Reduction Act, which specifically stimulated the manufacture of products within the US. So the factories that Trump is going to claim are a result of this tax on the American consumer are already being built. They're already in progress, and will mean the US has access to local supply of solar and batteries. I honestly, I think it's very, very hard for the US, which values consumerism, to stop consumers putting solar and batteries on their houses, which is what all of us want to see. And by taxing the consumer, he's probably just made that a little bit more realistic, perhaps, or maybe a little bit more palatable to the Republican base. Who knows? But I can afford not being head of a global solar council to maybe a bit less diplomatic. I don't know. And that's not criticism of you, Sonia. I think
the thing about rooftop solar and distributed behind the meter solar is that it's a vote winner, right? It's everyone can absolutely get behind this. Everyone understands that this can really bring down the monthly power bills and the monthly energy and heating bills of real working families and real businesses all over the world. And that is something that everyone can really grasp in a very simple way. And so it doesn't matter if you're left or right. It doesn't matter which, whether you're from a democrat, a democracy or a sort of a non-democracy. Everyone can understand that, and everyone has to pay some kind of energy bill at the end of the month, or has no access to electricity and can get it through solar and storage for the first time ever. And that is something that politically is a very powerful thing to get across, and we should be doing that at every part of the political spectrum and in every type of market around the world.
And that's why I use the word tangible. It's one of the few tangible parts of this energy transition. A big offshore wind farm does save people money. It does reduce the amount of expensive gas that's burned, but we don't see that on our bills in the way that is as tangible as oh, I've got solar and batteries in rainy northern England and my bill's 80% lower. That's so obvious to people. And that's why I think it's so powerful, as you say, Sonia, politically. I think just in terms of people's, putting something in people's pocket, it's really powerful. And definitely politicians are starting to realise this. And I think, the work we've got over the next 2 years is to really hammer home that message of want to reduce people's bills, want to feel it, want to get re-elected. This is the way to do it. And we've seen that this week in Australia with a big subsidy, which, is something that is an interesting topic around whether subsidies are useful. But unleashing this battery subsidy as they have in Australia, you'll tell how many billions it is, Bertie. I can't remember the number, but it's tangibly going to reduce bills.
Yeah, 2.3 billion Aussie. And I did the maths I did on the weekend was like 10% of Australian homes should get a battery at 30% discount. The mega trends of low cost energy and, the accessibility and tangibility of these solutions are just, ultimately we will get through some bumps in tariffs, I am sure. So a couple of things I want to hit before we drop. So one, you mentioned Andrew in the UK, how renewables are up, reducing the gas dependency. Can you say a little bit about the work we did together on this paper? We're using your digital twin model to show a better path for the UK.
When I was at university, rather than chasing, I was building models of the grid that we could use to predict the future. And in real time, people can visit my website, mygridgb.co.uk, and see in real time what a expansion in the amount of wind and solar in the UK would mean. And Bertie, you picked this up. Sonia and I are using it for some other work. When you look at what mass deployment of wind and solar mean, it means that 95% of the time in the UK we will not be burning any gas, which is an amazing result to be at in 2030. What I think has been really interesting, Bertie, about the work you and I did and the realisation I had working with you was that the battery that many of us are going to see in our home actually becomes incredibly powerful to keep the grid running. It's very likely that within 5 years in the UK, there'll be enough power in batteries to back up 75% of the grid. That's an incredible position to be at. From an industry that's always thought it has to commit billions to massive nuclear power stations, to paying billions to keep gas power stations online, is actually in a position now where actually the humble little battery sat in people's wall, which 10 years ago was a brand new concept, could actually be meeting 75% of the UK's energy demand at peak. The UK is a great example for doing this because we're not famous for being sunny. We're famous for being a rainy country where, you don't think solar is great. And actually, GB News' line is, the UK is the 99th worst country in the world for solar, whatever. It's absolute rubbish because it still works here really, really effectively and from a way that is tangible to bill payers. At the end of the day, if National Grid are now paying me for using my battery to support the grid rather than me paying them, is a really, really great outcome. Now, there's loads of challenges we've got to go through, affordability, access to the technology, etc. But just the fact in 2030, with all that flex behind the meter, I think is really, really, really exciting. And I think the work we did, Bertie, really brought that home to me. And
Yeah, one little stat you didn't mention, just to add to all of that, which I agree, is the stat that Google worked out. So Google, our friends at Google, did a scan of all the rooftops in the UK, and to your point, I don't know who's saying that the UK doesn't work for solar, but that study showed you could get 300 gigawatts of solar on British roofs.
Enough
which
to meet enough to provide all our electricity for a year. Now, yes, it would all come in the summer. We've got a hydrogen storage issue, but the potential on rooftops is there, which is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, no, it's good. We'll be saving customers money, creating jobs, and delivering clean energy to the UK, which I think is my segue to the last point I wanted to raise. Sonia, you mentioned that one of the big things that GSC is working on is skills. In my model, in the S-curve model, we show that there's about 100 million jobs that will be created over the next 10 years if we carry on growing at 25%. So yeah, helping new people get into the industry, and skilling up everyone is a massive challenge. So do you want to finish us off with an optimistic note about how we're going to create all these jobs and skill up the workforce?
You know, we are an incredibly jobs-rich technology, right? Because we are so distributed, because we deploy in so many small-scale projects. We provide, you know, when a country goes solar, when a country decides it's going to really maximize its solar potential, it's creating jobs in every single village, town, and city across the country. You know, this is not just one coal mine there, a coal power plant there, a factory here. No, you know, good 70+% of the jobs are in the installation of the modules. Every solar panel has to be installed by a pair of human hands, whether it's on the ground, on roofs, floating on water, or elsewhere. And so we are an incredibly jobs-rich technology. So already the International Renewable Energy Agency estimates that 7.1 million people around the world are working in solar PV. That's the population of a small European country. You know, and that's going to grow and grow and grow. Other estimates suggest more. And as you say, you know, when we're getting those really high annual installation figures, we could be pushing up to 100 million people worldwide. What does that mean? Is that we really also have to mature as an industry and really make sure that we're looking after those people, and that these are not just fantastic local SMEs driving growth in their local areas, but also that we're putting in place basic minimum standards in terms of basic technical training and basic safety training in order to deliver all those projects, large and small, to the right level of quality, to the right level of performance, and with the minimum number of incidents. And inherently it's a very safe, it's a very low risk technology, but we definitely have to mature, just as other industries have done in the past, and create a global system. And that's why we at the Global Solar Council have created the Global Solar Training Standards Initiative, which often the people are really crying out for at the moment, and hasn't been done so far. And that's one of the ways in which we help both reduce transaction costs, reduce duplication, ease the sort of the process of doing business, and make it easier to skill up those people that we need all over the world in order to grow in the way that we will in the next 5, 10 and 15 years.
Amazing. Love it. So I just maybe one point, given this is Tariff Week, I think this is one message that, thanks to the Global Solar Council, we can hopefully get across to the world's governments, that I don't think people are really clocking this yet, that the vast majority of jobs in our industry are local, in installation and sales and logistics and finance and these other things. So when we say we want to protect jobs, we shouldn't just be thinking about manufacturing. In fact, if you put tariffs on panels and batteries and EV cars, etc., you're actually reducing the size of an industry that's going to actually create more jobs in those local communities with really high paid, high skill work that I think the economy needs. So I would love everyone who is listening to this. I think we will put the link to Global Solar Council somewhere left or below or above the screen. Please go to their website and become a supporter. Many of you will be in the industry. We need absolutely everybody supporting the Global Solar Council in their efforts to support this transition and help us create this wonderful industry. So thank you both. I think we're at time. Thank you both so much for joining. Andrew, Sonia, love working with you on all this, and we'll speak to you all soon. Thank you.